Google just quietly released something that might actually beat Claude at research, and I tested it myself to see if the hype is real. Stick around because by the end of this, you'll know exactly which one to use for what, and honestly, it's not the obvious choice. So here's the thing. For the last few months, Claude has been the go-to AI for anything that requires actual thinking. Deep research, complex analysis, pulling together information from multiple angles. Claude's been the king. But then Google dropped Gemini Deep Research Max, and I was skeptical. I've seen Google hype AI before. Remember Bard? Yeah, but this time something actually felt different, so I ran the same prompt through both and documented everything. Let me walk you through what I actually tested. I gave both AI models the same task: research the current state of renewable energy adoption in Southeast Asia, including barriers, recent breakthroughs, and investment trends. This isn't some fluffy prompt. It requires the AI to synthesize information, understand context, and present findings that are actually useful, not just confident-sounding hallucinations. First up, Claude. This is what I've been using for months. Claude took about 2 minutes to return a response. It was thorough, well-structured, with clear sections on policy frameworks, investment data, and technical barriers. The information felt accurate based on what I know about the space. It cited specific countries, specific initiatives. The depth was there. But here's what I noticed. It was mostly synthesizing what it already knew from its training data. The response felt like a really smart summary, not active research. When I asked follow-up questions about very recent developments from 2024, it hedged. It said things like "based on my knowledge cutoff" and "I believe but cannot verify," which is honest, but it's a limitation. Then I switched to Gemini Deep Research Max. This is the new feature Google rolled out, and the interface is different. You submit your query, and it actually goes out and searches the web in real time. Not in the way ChatGPT can browse. This is deeper. It's aggregating multiple sources, cross-referencing, and pulling live data. The process took about 4 minutes, which is longer, but here's where it got interesting. The response came back with citations, actual links to sources. Not just according to my training data, but here's the Financial Times article from March 2024 that says this, and here's the Asian Development Bank report from last month. The information was more recent. It caught nuances about specific policy changes in Vietnam and Indonesia that happened after my knowledge cutoff. It even flagged contradictions between sources, which showed it wasn't just pulling the first Google result and calling it a day. But, and this is important, it was also longer and sometimes over-detailed. It went down rabbit holes that weren't strictly necessary to answer the original question. Claude was more concise. If you just need a clean, well-reasoned answer and you don't care about real-time verification, Claude got there faster and cleaner. So where does each one actually win? Here's my honest breakdown. Use Claude if you're doing analytical thinking, coding, creative writing, or anything where you're leveraging reasoning over raw information. Claude's reasoning engine is genuinely better. If you're asking it to solve a problem or think through a complex scenario, Claude will outthink Gemini. I tested both on a coding problem, building a recommendation algorithm, and Claude's explanation was clearer and more elegant. Also, Claude is faster for most tasks. If speed matters and you don't need live data, Claude is your answer. Use Gemini Deep Research Max if you need current information, if you're researching something that's actively changing, or if you need to verify claims against real sources. If you're a journalist, a researcher, a student who needs citations, or if you're making a decision based on recent data, Gemini's live research capability is genuinely useful. You're not guessing whether the information is outdated. You're seeing where it came from. Here's what surprised me the most, though. Both of them hallucinated occasionally. Claude was more subtle about it. It would confidently state something that sounded plausible but wasn't quite right. Gemini caught itself more often because it was checking against sources. But it also sometimes misreads sources or pulled a quote out of context. So don't trust either one blindly. Verify the citations. Check the sources yourself. The real difference is this: Claude is better at thinking. Gemini Deep Research is better at knowing. And right now, for most people, knowing is actually more valuable than thinking because we're drowning in information, and what we need is the ability to find a signal in the noise. I'll be honest, I'm still using Claude for most of my work. The interface is smoother, it's faster, and for the kind of analysis I do, I don't need real-time data. But for anything where I need to cite sources or I'm working with recent information, Gemini Deep Research Max has become my default, and that's not something I thought I'd say 6 months ago. The bigger picture here is that we're moving into a phase where different AI tools are actually good at different things. The era of one AI to rule them all is ending. You need to know what each one does best and use them accordingly. That's how you actually stay ahead with this technology instead of just chasing whatever dropped last week. If you want to actually keep up with AI without the hype, subscribe. I test these things so you don't have to waste time on every new release, and I break down what actually works every few days. Let me know in the comments which AI you're using right now and what you're using it for. I'm genuinely curious what's working for people.